Hey everybody, you're watching The Gadfly. I'm David Rich, your host. We have Koti Wyoming from Underline, Illinois on the show tonight. How you doing, Koti?
Hey, doing good. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. So I advertised this show to many people in the area, and all of them seem to know who you are. So that's very cool that you have that sort of notoriety. I also grew up in Underline, as we were just discussing, so that's very cool. So let's get right into it because I know we have a lot of really interesting things to talk about. This started with me putting out a post for asking people to come on the show concerning paranormal experiences, stuff like that, and you responded that you had done tarot cards and you had read tarot cards in Austin, Texas, and had a lot of really interesting experiences thereof. So why don't you go ahead and just take the mic and go through it?
Yeah. So I'm Koti Wyoming. I've got over 11 years experience reading tarot cards. I currently use a Pokemon themed tarot deck, but
Okay,
I have
could you unwrap that for me? Because when I read that in your thing like the other day, I was like, oh, what?
yeah. So it's just
there's a tarot deck for everything, so it doesn't shock me that much. But I had never heard of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a pretty typical. It's a Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. It has pretty standard symbology, but it features various Pokemon on every card. And so it's, I don't know exactly who did the art. It was given to me as a gift, but from what I have looked into, a lot of the symbology is really close. They have like specific Pokemon that like the lore of that Pokemon ties directly into the story of the tarot card.
That's the beauty of tarot, is that it's archetypal and which are universal personality types. And so, yeah, you can find it just about everywhere.
Exactly. So yeah, I was really happy to get that. But I've always used a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and I still have my original deck that I used to use in Austin. And so my favorite cards, I would say, are the Fool, the Magician, and the Wheel. And my favorite minor arcana are the Three of Cups, the Six of Coins, the Five of Sticks, and the Knight of Swords.
Okay, why those in the minor arcana? If you can kind of give me a brief synopsis of each one. The Fool, the Magician, and the Four. I mean, those are a little more explicit and just
yeah.
So, but what about the minor arcana? I'm curious.
So the Three of Cups has always been for me. It's like the party card, and that was one that came up a lot on 6th Street when I was reading in Austin. Because it's a bar street, everybody's there to have fun, and so people would get that card all the time. And especially as their environment card. I can't tell you how many times I would be doing a reading and everything else is like a totally normal reading. And that environment card is the Three of Cups because we're standing on the bar street and that's just where you are.
Yeah, that's cool.
So the Six of Coins is another big one. That's sort of the charity card or the giving back card. And I think that that's a really important one because the suit of coins is all about like business and money. And it can be a very selfish suit. But the Six of Coins is all about what you give back. And so I've always really liked that, like the spirit of that card. The Five of Sticks is really cool to me because it has to do with like conflict and drama, but it's not. The Five of Swords is more serious conflict. You're fighting with swords. But the Five of Sticks, you're just fighting with sticks. And so I think that that's a much more reasonable conflict. It's the Five of Sticks is like a fight between friends. And I think that that's something important that you have to overcome in a relationship.
No, that's really actually very interesting as far as like they each represent conflict in some sense. The swords, well, yeah, you could kill somebody with a sword.
Exactly.
Sticks are just sort of like, kind of duking it out a little bit, letting out your aggressions, but getting your point across and not really hurting anybody. So that's really interesting.
Exactly. And then the Knight of Swords, to me, the Knight of Swords is just about wanting to be the best, wanting to be very good, wanting to prove yourself, but with like reason to prove yourself, not just trying to sort of be arrogant and condescending, but to like
not just being a cocky prick. Because
exactly, the Knight of Swords is demonstrating that you belong there and that you're like a powerful knight.
No, I like that. That's very cool. Yeah, just showing your worth.
Right.
No, that's very cool. All right, Ron. Sorry, go ahead. What else were you going to say?
All right. So to me, I think a big part of tarot is just that it's a statistical method of self-reflection and psychological probability. It's 78 cards. They each describe sort of a facet of the human experience, and we all experience those 78 different things. And so when you put 10 cards together, it's sort of this mental narrative that you can form that just helps you organize your thoughts. It's not necessarily like magic, but it has these elements that it's very synchronistic. And it can have a lot to do with like sort of manifestation, where once you can categorize your thoughts, you can like focus your energy better.
Right. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the explanation you gave, the description of it. It's very cool. Yeah, it's synchronicity is a really good word for that. Just that, that it all has meaning in one way or another. I've done readings before that were so accurate and profound and deep that, I mean, the person starts crying. There's
Right.
so much just profound meaning being, emanating from the cards. And I've done ones that, like, it's difficult to say that any tarot read can be wrong, like 100%, like, because of what you just said. Like, it all applies somehow, some way. I've had greater interpretations and lesser interpretations. I'll say that, but I've never seen anything where everybody's like, "No, that's ridiculous." So no, tarot cards are very powerful in that right as well. And again, like you said, it really kind of gets the juices flowing, so you can put your own situations into perspective with words and ideas, and then you can handle them much better.
Totally. So just a little bit about my like style of reading. I don't personally use reverse cards or reverse interpretations. I think that's kind of a controversial thing. A lot of readers do, a lot of readers don't. I find them to just be very negative cards, very negative meanings and interpretations. And I think that the standard interpretations are like a sufficient array of like meanings. And you don't necessarily need an extra 78 definitions that are almost always going to be like a sadder or more negative perspective on the situation.
Right. I mean, the deck itself has cards that are darker in meaning,
right?
Show desperation, moments of desperation and anguish, and a lack of forgiveness and mercy, and also a lack of love.
Right.
So yeah, no, the inverse of a card, because you shuffled it awkwardly or something, whatever. I never really put any stock in that either. And I like how you said it. You don't need another 78 meanings.
Right.
So, if something dark comes up, like the death card or the tower card or something like that, it's gonna, you should talk about it in a way that's both meaningful, accurate, and not negative. If you can, it just, the death card can just mean sort of change whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
In the most simple sense, and it's the whether you like it or not part that can get a little dark. But but yeah.
Yeah. And so one thing I did when I first started reading, this is just sort of my advice to any new readers. What I did is I found 7 different sources of different card meaning interpretations, and I created my own word clouds for each card using those different interpretations. And then after I had done that, I went through the word clouds and just picked my favorite words and wrote my own interpretations, understanding each card better. And that just made me more personally familiar and have sort of my own meaning for every card rooted in everyone else's meaning.
That's very cool. I like that. Is that a method that you got from looking into the 7 different areas, or did you?
No, it was just, I was playing around with the cards a lot, and I had some different books, and I was using some different websites, and I wanted to sort of create my own journal just to better understand stuff. And so that was the system I came up with, just to create that first definition list for myself.
That's very cool. That's actually personalizing the deck is a very important part of being, I think, a good reader.
Yeah, I think so. And it did. It created ideas that I still rely on to this day, just like anecdotes that I thought of that related to a card. And that's still the same 6 words that I say every single time I draw that card.
I love that. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay, so my time as a professional tarot reader, I don't charge money. I try not to. I think there's different beliefs on that. So I accept tips and donations. I think that if people just want access to the information, I'm happy to provide it. And if they think that the information is worth something, then I'll take whatever they have to offer. And that's usually worked out for me pretty well. A lot of people have given me more than I needed, and plenty of people have gotten the information that they needed, I hope.
And I love that too. And I when I read it, I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." And I will confess a couple of things. I have charged money. I have not charged money, depending. And every time I've charged money, like what you're saying, I was so relieved and refreshed to read what you wrote the other day about this, as I always felt bad charging money. I never liked it.
Yeah.
I felt
Right.
like I was like, I'm not claiming to be a priest or even that level of understanding of a tarot deck, compared to like a Catholic priest or something like that. But giving people insight and spiritual information is not something that you should be profiting off of.
Right.
There's too much morality involved, and that too much life value and that kind of thing. So yeah, no, I think from now on, I'm going to do what you do and just say, if you feel like donating some cash, great. If not, I'm perfectly fine with that. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, so at the time, it really was my chief source of income. And I was splitting tips with a friend of mine who she would hold the sign. And then when someone would come up for a reading, she would hold the sign like flat so that I could read the cards on it. And then as she listened to me read cards, she got familiar with some of the meanings. And so she would chip in with stuff, and we had sort of a back and forth. And it was really fun. And people would come up, and so I would do contact juggling while she would sort of dance around with the sign. And we had little costumes and outfits. We would get dressed up every day and go down to 6th Street.
That's very cool. I love the picture you're giving us of Austin, Texas, because Austin is known for it's a college town, so it's got that.
Yeah.
And it's just supposed to be a very cool, very, especially in like, state like Texas, very, it stands out as like a very liberal, very progressive, that kind of thing, and very animated as you're describing it. I lived in Portland, Oregon for 12 years. It was called the Portland of the South.
Right.
They're like sister cities in its function and presentation, if you will. It's aesthetic. So there's a, Keep Portland Weird was a bumper sticker going around everywhere.
Yeah.
It turns out some guy actually stole it from somebody in Austin and said "Keep Austin Weird." He just brought it up to Portland.
Yeah. Yep. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's hysterical. So anyway, very cool. So so you're a juggler and you're a tarot reader, and your friend was like the ring girl, if you will, and then she would put the thing down and you would do the tarot reading on top of the mat.
Yeah. And so we had a great time. And so this was all about 10 years ago. And the last time I was there on 6th Street, the corner that I used to just be this graffitied corner with like a little bar door next to it. And that's all gone. It's just a row of ATMs now. And I think that says a lot about where Austin's heading. But, it's still a great city. I try to visit almost every year.
Did you go to school there?
No, I moved there after I went to school. I did a study abroad in China. And then after that, I wound up moving to Austin for a while and just fell in love with Texas.
Right on. Very cool.
And so, some of the stories that I had, let's see. So there was one guy that really stands out. I gave him a reading, and I remember the Judgment card came up. And I was telling him that he needed to stay strong. There were some other cards, and I could see that I think he had like the 8 of Sticks. And so like I was telling him that the world was against him and that he needed to stay strong in this stuff. And this guy, he's there, and it's like his wife and kids are with him. It's like dark out on the bar street. He's like adult children, but like his whole family's out. And he starts crying and telling me that he's facing federal charges at work for some sort of corruption, embezzlement that he's completely innocent of. And he brought his family to Austin so that they could like try to relax. And I'm here telling him like, you're in the right. You just need to stay strong. And it was like, that was like the emotional oomph that he needed. And he just like, he let it all go. And he was like, he was so raw to see those emotions on his face that night.
Yeah, that's incredible. And again, that testifies to the power of tarot decks.
Yeah, that was a wild one.
That's very interesting.
There was another time I was just reading cards, and this seemed like a totally regular dude. And so I finished, and he was like, "Man, that was really cool." He was like really sort of cool. He didn't tip me at all. He didn't give me any money, but he pulls out his wallet and he flashes me. He has an NFL player card. I don't know what team. I'm assuming like, the Dallas Cowboys or something. I don't know. But he was like, oh yeah, isn't that cool? Like he was just showing off. So he was some like young rookie player, just like happy to be there and wanted to let me know I read tarot for a real NFL player.
That was your
So that was a cool night.
You know.
Okay, one night there was this woman. She was acting kind of weird, and I remember my partner told me that she had like dropped a bunch of stuff. She dropped her cigarettes and like picked them up, and she dropped some money and picked it up, and she just kept dropping stuff. I didn't notice that at the time. I read her tarot, and she told me I finished. It was like a quick, maybe 10-minute reading or something, and she like finished. She just had this shocked look on her face. She handed me $100 just right then and there. And she said that I was better than her therapist that she pays $100 an hour to every week. And that like 10-minute tarot session on the sidewalk like helped her like break through more than like months in therapy.
Yeah, no, and that's very cool. And it's not the first time I've heard something like that nor experienced that. I mean, I had a very close friend die a miserable death in Portland, and it kind of messed me up. So I remember going to therapy, and I would tell you what, I would take a tarot read over therapy any day.
Yeah.
Tarot reads are far more applicable than just some dude sitting in a chair telling you, listening to you talk about whatever. No, absolutely 100%. That's very cool. And $100, hey, that's all right. There you go.
Right, yeah, that was some of the best money I ever made. Okay, there was this guy, a DJ Gypsy Kid, and he was a musician on 6th Street. He performed. I never saw any of his shows. He was some sort of musician, but he found out that I was this tarot reader, and so part of his shtick was that every time he would perform, he would come find me and get a tarot reading about like how his show was going to go, so that I could like predict for him, and then he could like tell his like audience, like I just got my tarot cards read, and like this is what they said. And he was a funny guy. He would just pass like loose cigarettes and like drugs. Stuff. He would just have like a handful of something and just be like, "Here you go, man. Give me my cards for the night."
That's cool. That's fun.
Yeah.
Here we go. Jill Hughes is watching. Jill's is a friend of mine through WRLR, the radio station that we work at.
Okay.
Over on Lake Beach. She says she would love a reading. I don't know who she's talking to, but I guess we can each do one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, that's very cool. So this guy came to you right before his shows to.
Yeah, I think he had like Romani lineage in his family.
Oh, interesting.
And so it was sort of part of his act, and he just really liked the fact that he could see like a real tarot reader just right before his performances. And I think that was part of his like, identity and stuff, sort of became getting that tarot reading for his performance.
That's very cool. All right.
There was this really cool, polite, homeless guy. He was really nice. He would come up and he would get readings sometimes, and he would, again, he'd pay me in like a loose cigarette or something, whatever he had. But I remember one time I didn't see him for a while, and like a week later he came back and he was really sorry, and he gave me like 4 joints, and he told me that I had given him the 4 of swords. And I told him he needed to be vigilant. I told him he needed to like watch his back and be vigilant.
Interesting.
And he didn't. He said that he ignored me and that he was reckless, and he got arrested and went to jail for the week. And so he got out and was like, "I'm never ignoring you again. Here's some weed, and thanks for the reading." And so he was a good. He liked to listen and get his readings, and I hopefully gave him some good advice. Straighten his life out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. See, again, testifying to the power of tarot. When you ignore its message, it's designed to give you insight into your own self and your situations. So yeah, I wouldn't just dismiss it as nothing. Interesting, and paid you in pot. That's always
good. Yeah. So I remember there was this one guy. This was time I was working by myself. I didn't have my partner with me. And someone came up, and they seemed really nervous, and they were like, I don't know. They had a weird energy about them, but they're like, I don't think they even said anything. I think they just kind of gestured that like they wanted a reading. So I started reading their cards. and I got about 3 cards in, which I always do a 10-card reading. So I got about 3 cards in, and they just kind of like, I don't know, they kind of like laughed or scoffed or something, and they just shoved a $20 bill at me and walked away. And I still don't know if I was doing like really good and they just like didn't want to hear it, and they're like, here's your money, I'm not ready for this, or if I was like doing really bad and they maybe felt sorry for me and they're like, this guy needs to eat because he's a terrible tarot reader. But it was really weird. It was just really weird energy. Like they just wanted to give me some money, but they had never gotten a tarot reading and they just didn't like it and left.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I guess it could be one of the other at this point.
Yeah, I really don't know.
It was utterly floored, like, wow, here you go. I walked away. You're like, okay, dude, whatever.
Yeah, lots of people would walk away. Like it wasn't that big of a deal for someone to like, oh, I don't really like this, and just walk away. Like whatever, that's fine. But to just shove a 20 at me and walk away like that was weird. That was weird.
That is weird. Okay, all right, go on.
Okay. There was another regular customer of mine. And they were a musician and they played a lot of shows, and I don't know, they never seemed to have any money. I don't know how they how they got paid or whatever, but they would always buy me a drink. They'd come after their show. They'd get a reading about like how their music career was going and stuff. And then they'd take me into the bar and buy me a couple drinks, and they never had any cash. They just put it on their card or whatever. And so I have no idea how they were funding it or what sort of debt I put them into personally. But cool. It's always good for a few drinks after the show.
Yeah, dude, fair enough. That's awesome.
Cool.
How long were you in Austin for?
So these days I'm usually in Austin just for a few days a year. I go to the Kerrville Folk Festival in Kerrville, Texas every year. I'm a volunteer security crew leader. And so that's an 18-day camping festival in the Texas Hill Country.
Oh, wow.
And this year will be our 50th anniversary. So I've only been going for about 10 years now. But with the 50th anniversary coming up, we're pretty sure it's the oldest music festival in the country.
50 years is a long time.
Yeah. So that gets me down to Texas every year. So I usually wind up spending a few days in Austin, just seeing my old friends and hanging out. You like Texas as a state? I do. I really like Texas, and I've had a few different people over the years, different people, different social groups dub me as an honorary Texan. So I've taken that to heart, and I have a lot of respect for the state and the culture. I actually, one of my side projects, I'm involved in some like Web3 internet redevelopment stuff. And one of the guys is actually trying to build an entire sort of new internet just for Texas. So their websites, instead of .com, they're .tx. Sort of, yeah. That's
like something that somebody from Texas would do.
Yeah, and it's just sort of a very freedom-loving, decentralized internet. And it's a pretty cool project.
That's very cool. I just always like that they're always like, it almost seems like they're in a constant state of trying to secede from the Union.
Yeah, I call it the Republic of Texas.
Yeah, I think they do.
Yeah, it's definitely its own country. They have their own, national beer.
That's cool. If I ever became president, Texans, you go right ahead, please. it's your state. So all right, very cool. Anyway, go ahead. We have more to discuss for sure.
Yeah, okay. So these next, I have a few more tarot stories, but these ones weren't when I was working in Austin. These were just some different, more interesting experiences over the years. So one of them, this was probably one of the darkest tarot readings I've ever done in my entire life. It was for one of my mom's friends, and she was going through a rough period. She was dealing with like divorce and some stuff. And so she asked me for a tarot reading, and it was dark. She had the Tower. She had the 3 of Hearts. I think she had the 9 and the 10 of Swords. And the Death card was definitely in there. Like it was all of them. It was just everything. And I really struggled with how to even break this news to her. I was kind of new to tarot myself at the time. I'd only been doing it a couple years at this point. and I didn't really know what to tell her, and I kept trying to like spin in each card, like to be like, well, it's not that bad. And I would play the next card, and well, it's not that bad. And so we kind of got to the end, and I didn't even know what to say, and we just everybody knew what was going on, and we just because my mom and another one of their friends was like sort of listening in on the reading, and everybody kind of got what was going on. And so I picked up the card, and so less than a week later, she was committed to a mental hospital. And I don't know. I think she eventually got out, and I think she's doing better. But this was like this wasn't just like she didn't feel good and she needed a tarot reading. This was like she was in severe traumatic chaos.
Forces there, yeah.
And the cards could recognize that. The cards knew that this was serious, and they pulled out all the worst cards just to sort of be like, this is a serious situation.
Wow. That's as much of a bummer as that is, it's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I did. That was definitely a moment for me when I started to trust the cards more. And when I realized that, like, if they were saying something that direct and that strong, that you had to listen. That, a lot of times you do a reading and it can be a little like milquetoast or lukewarm, and it's just kind of like, yeah, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Like,
you're going through some changes.
Yeah, right. You're going through some changes. Yeah, exactly. But if all the stops are being pulled, like there's something going on, and you need to pay attention.
Right. Absolutely.
And that was a really interesting reading. So there was one time I was traveling cross country. I typically drive between Texas and Illinois. And so one year it was festival season, and I went down there, and I spent all my money at festival, and I needed to get home to Illinois, and I didn't really even have the gas money to get home. And so I made some cardboard signs, and I would basically just set up rest stop to rest stop across the highway, and just do tarot readings for a few people. And so it wasn't too eventful. I got thrown out of a couple rest stops. Some of them don't like the sign. They don't mind if you charge money. I had my ukulele with me, so I'd like play for tips.
Oh, ukulele, that's cute.
And play for tips and, read cards and stuff. And so a few people stopped, but there's one woman in particular that she was really interested. She said she had done cards when she was like a kid. And this was an older woman. She was probably in her like 70s maybe. And she was really just intrigued by the whole thing. And so she sat down and she talked with me, and we played with the cards for a while. And then when we were all done, she just kind of like handed me a few 20s, which was enough gas to get home. And she sent me on my way. And I was really thankful for that. And I really, I think the cards, in a lot of ways, they bring people together. And it's the kind of thing where when you set yourself up as like the card reader, and it's not even about charging money or making money, you're like sort of making a statement about who you are and like what you're doing. And like, I have advice for you. Do you need advice? I have advice.
Yeah.
And, let's talk about it. And I think people see that and they respect it. And that attitude is what got me home that summer.
There you go. I mean, that's you just kind of described the fool's journey.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Which you mentioned in your writings as well.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go there, or if you wanted to just go in sequence, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, let me just finish up. I got two more of these tarot stories, and then we can skip to the fool's journey.
Sure.
Okay, so I always say that the Ace of Cups is new relationships typically. But fundamentally, I call it the pregnancy card, because oftentimes the Ace of Cups it symbolizes a birth, or it symbolizes a new life, a new beginning. And so there's only one time that I can truly recall being correct on that. And so I never really like flat out say like you're pregnant. That's not that's not really how it works. But I'll often say like, you got the Ace of Cups. That could, mean a new relationship, or maybe you're pregnant, depending on the context, if that's an appropriate statement to make.
Right.
And so there was one time where I was doing a reading for, it was at a yoga studio. And so I was doing readings for the staff and everyone. And it was one of the teachers. We were in a private room together, and I was doing her reading. And I drew the Ace of Cups as I think her past card or her present card. I forget. But I drew the Ace of Cups, and I said, hey, sometimes that's the pregnancy card. You never know. And she sort of got quiet, and she looked at me, and she was just like, well, I haven't told my husband yet.
A complete stranger tarot reader knows before her husband.
Yeah, exactly. And that was such an intimate moment there, just for that moment. And she really opened up to me, and she kind of like, I think she had a lot of fears and she had a lot of doubts.
Sure.
And she hadn't told anyone yet. This was brand new for her. Wow. And I said that, and she just kind of was like, yeah. And she had stuff she wanted to talk about. And I mean, I didn't have all the answers for her, but I think that just having that open dialogue and letting her sort of get that out, I think was really helpful for her. And I think really, hopefully helped her moving forward.
Very cool, man. That's very cool. I bet she was probably like, oh, wait, what did you just say? I mean, to be able to tell something like that is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Okay, so then the last story I have is this was during the pandemic more recently, after I got my Pokemon cards. And so I was reading for just a friend of mine. She's someone I'm not very close with her, but we went to high school together, and we follow each other on Facebook, and we like each other's memes and stuff, And so I posted I was doing tarot card readings, and she asked for one. And so there's a Pokemon Mew, and it's just sort of a particularly cool Pokemon. It's like the first mythical Pokemon. It's one of the OG Kanto Pokemon. And so in the Pokemon deck, the World card, the Major Arcana, is Mew. That's the Pokemon on it. So her not knowing that at all, she just was like, oh, you're using Pokemon cards. That's cool. I hope I get Mew. Like, that's my favorite Pokemon. I want to get Mew. So like, all right, cool. So whatever. And so I'm doing the cards for her. And sure enough, her 10th card, her like final card, her outcome, is the World with Mew on it.
Wow.
And like, that was just such a sort of touching, like, it was cool. And I didn't fake it. It was the kind of thing I could have faked or something. But I didn't. And so that was really happy for her. And then it was a couple weeks later, she asked me for another tarot reading. And I kid you not, I can't make this up. 10 cards. That 10th outcome card was once again the World with Mew.
Nice.
And it was just such a wild, again, a synchronicity that I just couldn't believe it. And she, she was pretty happy about it. I don't think she really understood the statistical significance of the whole thing.
Right.
But I thought it was just fantastic that here she was getting not just such a significant tarot card as her outcome, but that it was her favorite Pokemon was on that tarot card.
Oh, no, that's awesome. That's, very fortuitous. And very, that is a perfect example of synchronicity, like profound synchronicity.
Yeah, that was such a good one. That just made me really happy about
and the World card itself. I mean, it's just that's the final stage of that's the completion of the Fool's Journey. That's pure individuation. Yeah, that's cool. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so that's sort of the end of those stories. So to me, the Fool's Journey, like I sort of put in my notes, I'm not super familiar with the traditional. I've read a lot of like Wiccan texts and neo-pagan stuff. And I, years ago, I definitely read through different interpretations of the Fool's Journey. But to me, the way that I've always sort of seen it is just that if you want to reach enlightenment, you have to properly understand all 22 cards. And that once you can sort of take the lesson from each card and like embody the spirit like of each one equally, not any particular card more or less than any other card, that's sort of the ultimate balance of the force or whatever you want to call it. And that's enlightenment. That's that sort of nirvana that everyone talks about. And that, so, I would say there's probably many paths, different faiths and different creeds. There are different paths towards enlightenment and true understanding. And so that within the tarot, I think that the Fool's Journey just signifies one of those many paths. And that if you can follow the Fool's Journey and respect all 22 major arcana, that's it. You'll be a better person. And that's really all there is to it. It's just sort of the lesson of the cards.
Yeah, very cool. No, that's exactly what the major arcana is the fool's journey for sure. Joseph Campbell, who came up, who coined the phrase, the hero's journey, not the fool's journey, sorry, the hero's journey.
Yeah, the hero's journey.
Yeah. He was a mythologist. He was a Jungian psychology expert, and he was changed my life reading him. And he has a book called The Hero's Journey. And basically, as a mythologist, he studied world mythologies and religions.
Well, now wait, hold on. Let me stop you there. So
Okay.
the hero's journey and the fool's journey are two separate things, are they not?
Okay, I don't know. I thought you were referring to the hero's journey.
So no, so
the fool's journey is I think they're the same thing. But go ahead.
I think so. To me, the fool's journey is a tarot specific sort of concept. But my understanding, I've always heard the hero's journey, or maybe the hero's tale, is just sort of the first narrative, and that's just the original sort of idea of a story where the good guy overcomes evil and has to, like, that's the hero's journey, and that's just sort of like an archetype or a trope.
Hero's journey is definitely an archetypal journey, and I've heard the people talk about it as being the major arcana, and if they're two different things, okay.
Well, that's interesting to actually hear you sort of suggest that the crossover, because they do make a lot of sense. In many ways, the fool's journey is just sort of a tarot interpretation of the hero's journey. Right. Like, they are very much the same thing, just in a sort of different.
The fool's journey, the tarot, the major arcana is just a more specific step by step.
Yeah.
But which may or may not be actually in sequencing your own personal life. I mean, you start off as a fool. I guess that's necessary. But you can at 2 years old, you can go through a Tower card, and then back to the Magician card, and then over to the Empress card, and then back to the
right.
to the Lover's card. It's not necessarily linear. So yeah, but no, that's interesting. I don't know. So yeah, okay. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I guess we have a little time left. Before I get into talking about the Satanism stuff and my dad, the ghost hunter, do you want me to sort of go over my system of organizing the tarot suits?
Yeah, do that. I'm interested in hearing them.
Okay. So this is a system I pretty much made up myself that I've been working on for the last decade, in one way or another. It started as just a system of notation. So I guess the easiest way is to just say it, that it's 5 letters, all lowercase. And so it's VOLTE, volt. Right. And so volt has like sort of techno-pagan elements of like, electricity, volt, power, however you want to look at that. But fundamentally, each letter is just one suit of the tarot. So the V looks like a cup. The O looks like a coin. The L looks like a stick. The lowercase t looks like a sword. Mm-hmm. And then the lowercase e is a swirl, which is like the chaos of the major arcana.
Interesting.
And so then it also serves as sort of a ranking of, I don't know if you're familiar with like the hierarchy of needs, where you have like your base needs, and then you have like your, more, mental
individuations all the way at the top.
Yeah, exactly. So the way that I've sort of ranked the 4 tarot suits is that at the bottom, there's V, which is the cups, or the elements of air. And that has to do with your emotions and your relationships and stuff. And so then you need to have your emotions in check and your relationships before you can move on to coins. So coins is the letter O, which is the element of earth. And that has to do with all your money and business and physical assets and stuff, physical resources. And so you have to have your money and your finances in order before you can truly educate yourself, before you can spend time to study and improve your mind. So L represents the suit of sticks, the element of water, which has to do with education and knowledge and teachers and stuff. And so that's important to master. And you need to study strategy before you can pick up a sword and fight with it. So the T represents the suit of swords, or the element of fire. And so this is your passions, your goals and aspirations, and like big movements and changes you want in the world. And so then you should be passionate about things before you fall in love, which is the E, the 22 major arcana, or the fifth element, love, which is, the other four elements combine and form love.
Interesting.
And so that's sort of just a system of categorizing it all as to like how to prioritize different cards. Is just that it's a clear, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When there are sort of conflicts like that, and you can rank it either way. It's not that one is necessarily better than the other, but it's sort of one, at its root, you have your more primal emotional state with the cups, and then you have the more enlightened emotional love with the major arcana. And then everywhere in between is like the growth and decision making and discretion. And so it's just a method of organizing those thoughts.
Very cool. Oh, that's a very effective system.
Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. All right.
Yeah, and so Volt, Volt is just sort of it started, like I said, as just the notation, and it kind of grew on me. And so now that Volt, VOLTE, it's sort of my Wiccan name within the craft, and I mark it on like amulets and stuff. If I'm like making gifts for a friend or something like that, I just sort of mark it with the Volt name, and that's just sort of my identity within the craft.
That's cool. That's a cool name. I like that name.
Thank you.
Thank you. That has I grew up listening to heavy metal. I don't know, for some reason it's striking that chord.
Yeah, no, I like it. I think it's just a solid sort
of like intensity, intensity, like an electric volt or something. Like, okay, that's cool.
Okay, so I guess I don't know which direction to shift into. Do you want me to get into the Satanism stuff, or do you want to just talk about sort of the ghost hunting with my dad first?
Let's do the Satanism first.
The Satanism first?
Yeah, because that was interesting too. You're the third Satanist that I've had on the show in a row. For some reason, it wasn't even necessarily on purpose. The first one was. It's just two people over the last 2 weeks were from the Satanic Temple. The one that's for social justice and stuff like that. And the Baphomet statue down south. They're awesome. They're fucking awesome. But like you said in the list, I think I read, there are many different forms of Satanism, of course. I think here in America, the Western traditions, LaVeyan Satanism, Anton Xander LaVey in the 1966, it opened up the Age of Satan and started the Church of Satan, that kind of thing. That's probably like where it gets most of its notoriety from.
Absolutely.
But since then, there's been a multitude of different. I was in the Temple of Set for a while back in the 90s, and that's literally an offshoot of the Church of Satan.
Okay.
One of the high priests from the Church of Satan, Michael Aquino, had it with Anton Xander LaVey and went off and started his own. And now there's like the Temple of the Vampire, the Satanic Temple, the Temple of Satan. There's Luciferianism, there's Satanism, there's materialist Satanism, there's theistic Satanism. There's all just holy fuckballs.
There's a whole. There's one I've been following. I think they're the Evergreen Temple of Satan, and they've actually risen up directly against the Satanic Temple that we all know and love, and they've sort of risen up just specifically as criticism of that branch.
Wait, you're a part of?
I'm not a part of them. They're just one that I've noticed. I've been following them on Facebook at least recently. And their whole thing is just pointing out and criticizing the more mainstream Satanic Temple and all the flaws within it that they see. And like, I just find it so interesting that even within such a smaller faith, there's such a strong schism.
They hated the temple people, like it's the Temple of Set people and the Church of Satan people fucking hated each other.
Yeah.
Because the high priest of Church of Satan, Michael Aquino, who started the Temple of Set, left, in a huff. I mean, he was not a very peaceful, departure. There's the schism, as far as I understand it still exists to this day. This is back in 1975 or something like that.
Wow.
And if you just read, if you go on the Church of Satan's website, it talks about like any other type of Satanism and in a very, very negative, aggressively negative way.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So I guess what I had written is that there's many different branches of Satanism. And something that most will tell you is that they don't literally worship Satan. I think that's a big element that many Satanists subscribe to. Yep. Is that they have some very reasonable guidelines, 11 tenets sometimes that they follow that make a lot of sense. They have some really good advice in there. And like any organized church or organized religion, these temples, they have good elements, they have bad elements.
Right.
And so I think, they're as legitimate as any other church or temple or belief.
Yep.
But for me personally, though, I would say that I worship Satan. And so according to the biblical definition, and this is something I actually read in a book by Saul Alinsky. He's a pretty well-known social organizer, and he was a big proponent of Satan, at least as a character, and pointed out that he was the first being to defy God,
right,
and was given his own kingdom as a reward. And I think that that's a really important characteristic to make, is that you had this all-powerful authority, this God, and Satan came along and was like, no, I don't think that's okay.
right.
I think we need, an election of some sort. I think we need democracy. I think we need options at the very least.
Free thinking,
yeah. And that was the Satanist belief. Right. And so I think that there's a lot of value to that. That's, I wasn't raised as a Satanist, but I was raised to question authority. And that's sort of the belief that I clung to. Was just that you should question that authority. And so when I was younger, in my earlier 20s and stuff, I used to practice more like neo-pagan stuff, and I celebrated the horned god with fire worship and things like that. And now I don't really do stuff like that much anymore, but it was definitely, it was really enjoyable, sort of exploring those cultural practices and challenging, more traditional ritual and how that works, and just sort of being true to my own religious concepts. So I guess, my story, the sort of narrative that I've cooked up over the years, I believe that what we call Satan is actually the original earth god Gaia. And I think that early humans worshipped this deity, which kept their sort of energy or their prayer in a cycle within the planet. But then there was maybe an outside force, an evil false god who came from the sky. And this god tricked the humans into sending their energy up to the sky. Instead of worshiping the ground, this god wanted them to worship the sky and send their prayers and their worship up to the sky above. And so they used their power and their propaganda to demonize the Satan god who lived in the earth. They called that hell, and this was a villain. And if you worshipped the ground and the earth, then you were worshiping the devil and you were going to go to hell. And so I think that this is a really problematic belief structure. And I think that, there are a lot of problems today that are really rooted in people continuing to worship this sky god and sending their energy up to the sky, instead of sending that energy back into the earth and worshiping Gaia, the true God of the earth. And so I think, I just really think that there's a lot of progress that has to be made on that front, and that, it's sort of like a spiritual awakening of sorts, that a lot of people have just been fooled into worshiping this false god. And I don't know. That's just kind of my stance on it.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect analogical system you have there. That makes a lot of sense for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's kind of, you just kind of made your own myth.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's
and very appropriately. You got the meaning you're trying to get across.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very cool. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I'm sorry, you can hate me all you want, but most people know that I think this. The Bible-based religions are fucked. They're not good. If you really pay attention, you'll see that they are unjust. They are oppressive. They condone slavery. The whole goal of Christianity is to be a fucking slave to Jesus. Fuck that. Okay. And you're right. I always thought I don't call myself a Satanist, but I've got, one day you'll meet me in person. You'll see. I definitely sympathize with it, identify with a lot of that, what's going on there. And looking at Satan as a figure, if you read the Garden of Eden account and sort of reason from that myth, he was saying like, this is the tree of knowledge. I mean, and
Right.
you eat it, you're going to have divine knowledge. You're going to know the difference between good and bad. Whereas God was trying to keep them ignorant and uneducated. Well,
Exactly.
divine knowledge is exactly what I want. I mean, that's exactly.
Yeah.
I'm a philosopher. It's exact. I want the highest knowledge I could possibly access, and,
Satan was
and I will think. I will use. Yeah, exactly. And I will use education and methods of reasoning on my own to get there. I will be a slave to no one, and so like just the whole religion fucking starts off with bullshit. So the way I said it to a no longer friend of mine who's a pastor of a church is like, Christianity is false, you're wrong, and your whole life is a giant lie.
I like
Yeah. So anyway, that's very cool. I very much appreciate that the perspective on that. That's very cool.
for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just touch on my dad real quick. So I wanted to mention my dad. He, has a lot to do with the reason that I grew up to sort of be interested into this sort of paranormal type stuff.
Which is cool as hell. Not many people have that lucky of get those kind of cool parents, so that's very
cool.
Yeah.
My mom doesn't have much time for ritual, but she's a pretty powerful sorceress herself.
Oh, I know.
My dad, he drives a hearse. He
I love that.
Cool. People ask him if it's haunted, and he will say no. He exercised it himself, and he really did.
Oh, right.
And he knows all the haunted graveyards in like a few states around. He loves to go by. He'll drive by them. He's taking me, like we'll be driving somewhere, and he'll take me out of the way just to drive past some graveyard and be like, "Look for swirling circle lights this time." I'm like, "All right, I'm looking for the swirling circle lights this time." I mean, one time there were some swirling circle lights. It was wild.
Right on.
Yeah, he knows where to look.
Yeah, no, you seek these things out, you're gonna find them, folks.
Yeah, there's a werewolf in Wisconsin. I think it's called the Braylock Werewolf or something like that.
Oh wow.
And it's been around for a long time. He's showed me some videos about it. There's a lot of people pretty recently, within the last couple of years, but going back a couple decades, that say they've seen this werewolf. And he really wants me to go hunt it. He thinks I could find it, and he really thinks that's a great idea. He likes to set up ghost traps of different sorts. So basically, like electrical traps, I guess, where if sort of an energy triggers it or something, it'll flip a light or trigger a light of some sort.
That's interesting. I haven't heard of those except for in Ghostbusters. They got the things that open up.
Yeah, right. I think that's probably where he kind of got the idea. But he saw some videos where they communicate with the spirits by getting them to like flicker a light bulb on something. There's a lot of those out there. So he's set up sort of his own systems, and he can usually get if someone's complaining that an area is haunted, he can usually go in and get some sort of response and usually clear it out. Usually if he does whatever it is he's doing, people quit complaining that it's haunted afterwards. Like, the incidents go away.
That's very interesting. Does he do that around here, like professionally or on?
Not professionally or anything. No, just sort of his friends know that he's into it. So if somebody thinks somewhere's haunted, they call him up and he'll check it out.
That's very cool. Because do you know who Nick Sarlo is?
No, I don't.
Nick Sarlo, he started, he's a paranormal investigator. He's got a team of like 10. They travel all over the country doing that kind of stuff. He's from Lake Villa. I had him on the show recently. Shadow Hunters is the name of the podcast or show that he started. I was just curious if you knew him, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And so then the last thing about my dad, something that always grown up that, and I never really had the words for it until recently. But now we call it's the Numerology of NASCAR. And it's basically his own little divination system where he uses the numbers and his little system, and he can tell you who's going to win. He can figure it out.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and so he's had for years, everyone in the family, he assigns everyone their own like 5 numbers. And then he'll rank you based on how well your cars do every season. And it sort of has like values to it, and he'll sometimes let you pick your numbers if you've got a really good reason for a number, but he'll usually tell you what the good numbers are. And yeah, he does. He can pretty much tell you who's going to win, and he's got it down. And I think that was a big reason, having to pick those numbers and doing that sort of. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's just gambling, but in a lot of ways, it's finding those patterns and seeing how to sort of read between the lines from this sort of number set and see like what's going to happen. Use these numbers to predict this outcome, and it's just something he's always done, and I've always sort of found it interesting. And I didn't really think about it as a system of numerology until much more recently, and that it's just he's got his magic numbers, and he knows how to tell the future with them.
Yeah, that sounds like numerology to me.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't know much about the tradition of numerology, but
right. Yeah,
it sounds like that would count.
Yeah,
no pun intended.
Okay. So I guess before we go, so there's a big superstition with tarot cards about you have to get your tarot deck as a gift. I'm sure you've heard that before.
I've heard it before. I mean, I don't think I have. I've got like 20 tarot decks. I don't think one of them was given to me.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, my first deck was not. I bought it for myself. Exactly. And it always worked just fine. I don't think. But, there's a superstition that I always kind of liked. And so what I've been doing is since I retired that deck, my original Rider-Waite, I've been giving it out one card at a time.
Oh, that's right.
Just to interesting people. And so that way I'm sort of spreading it out. And that deck was a gift to 78 different people just after I used it.
That's very cool. Can I do this too? Do you mind if I do this?
Sure.
Because that's a very cool idea. I just want to, I mean, I don't legally, I guess I don't need your permission, but I mean, I just morally, I think I should, because that's just a really cool idea.
Thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'd like to offer you a card. If you have a specific, I've given out maybe like 10 of the cards so far, but if you have like a specific card that's like your favorite card, I'd love to just give you my original Rider-Waite copy of that card.
Oh, so I picked the card.
Yeah, so you can just pick a card, whatever card you're drawn to or like, and I'll either mail it to you or we can meet up or something.
All right, no, we should.
And you don't have to pick now. You can think about it.
No, I'm gonna ponder it. Thank you. Yeah, no, we need to definitely meet up and meet in face or something. Meet face to face. That'd be very cool. I used to work at Tina G's. You ever go there?
Yeah, I did go there a few times. Yeah.
I wonder if we met. Anyway, very cool. Yeah, no, I will definitely ponder that. That is very cool, and I love thinking about tarot cards anyway. So this gives me another reason to. So especially like pick my favorite card. I mean, I don't know if I've ever really tried doing that before. I mean, I know I'm thinking of like 5 cards off the top of my head right now that I'm probably going to choose from. These things are just, I really love the energy in these cards. So that's very cool. Yeah, it's a very cool idea.
Excellent. All right. Well, before we go, we got a couple minutes. If I could just shill my shit real quick.
Do your shit, bro.
All right. So if anybody wants a reading from me, you can email tarot@xb.wtf. So xb.wtf is my personal website. It's just a really short website that I use for a lot of stuff. So one thing I'm involved in right now is I'm trying to improve the internet, and educate people about who owns the World Wide Web. A lot of people think it's this big open free thing, but there's actually one group called ICANN, ICANN, and then there's a company called VeriSign. And between the two of them, they own your whole internet. If it's on a .com or a .net or a .org or a .gov, those are all owned by these two companies.
Okay.
And so this is kind of a huge thing that I'm really pissed off about, and I'm trying to teach people about. So there's a company, you'll like this. This is a company from Portland, Oregon. It's called Pork Bun, and it's owned by a guy named Raymond King. He's a 60-year-old meme lord who lives in Portland, and he has his own Wikipedia page, and he seems like a cool guy. He has a child named Dakota, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And he owns the .gay web domain. He owns a few more. He owns like .design. So instead of .com, you could have .gay or .design, and then you're renting your website from this guy Raymond in Portland instead of this massive multi-billion-dollar shadow company. And so that's just a really good start for people to get started. If you want to own your web space, use this company Pork Bun. And it's just a small business that can do everything that GoDaddy can do, but you're supporting a small business.
The pork bun. I'm putting this in the chat section, comment section, so people can see it.
Okay.
Pork bun, and it's owned by this one dude, and it's an alternative to everything else that's owned by these two companies. Like,
yeah. Basically, you can use their web domains like .design instead of .com, and it's owned by Pork Bun instead of VeriSign.
Yeah. That's crazy. Okay, yeah, no, it's one of those things like people don't even realize that like there's like 3 or 4 companies that own like almost all of like American media.
Yeah,
like stuff like that. You hear about it, you're like, whoa. So, yeah, that's interesting. I'd never heard of that.
Yeah. So then I'm also part of a bigger project called HNS. So you can check out my website hns.xb.whatthefuck.wtf. I'm a featured artist with the Mundaline Art Commission. I have an NFT game that's launching soon. And so you can find that one at nft.xb.wtf. And then I also have some web design services. And if you want me to build your website or consult with me or anything, you can just go to xb.wtf. And that'll take you to my web design services.
xb.wtf. Cool. All right. Very cool. All right, man. Good to know. Did you go to school for digital artistry?
I didn't. I actually went to school for philosophy.
That's my degree.
Yeah, I didn't finish my degree. I did the study abroad in China thing, and then I wound up just backpacking China alone for like 5 months and never went back to school.
You probably learned more on that trip. Do you mind like talking about the trip real quick, and then we'll call
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to hear about what was it like over in China.
So this was in about 2010, I want to say. It was I loved it. I think they have a blossoming middle class. I think that the common people are much more aware of the problems and the corruption than we want to think they are. And that my impression was that they see it and they realize how much they benefit from it, and they're willing to sort of let it go. Because they see the benefits to having their authoritarian government sort of do all this, and they see the economic growth that it's bringing them and how they are compared to other countries. And a big element right now is, I don't know if you're familiar with Africa being the China of China.
I am not.
So Chinese companies and government groups and stuff basically own a bunch of Africa and are using that to cheaply produce goods for Chinese citizens.
Okay. America does it too.
Right, exactly. So what America does to China's now doing to Africa.
And there's plenty of corruption and scandals here too, though,
Right, exactly. So it's hard to criticize them for it because we're benefiting from the
all the our politicians are probably get on their fucking high horse because we're America. Bullshit.
Right.
We could have an entire episode on that easily, very easy. All this dissing on Putin, and don't get me wrong, what he's doing is fucked. But how long of a list of American military atrocities would you like me to give you?
Right.
Okay, so okay, yeah, no, that's very cool. It looks like it's just a beautiful place. I've known people that have gone there. I remember distinctly, one person I knew, she was an advertising agent or something like that. And I said, how was it there? She's like, it's basically just like it is here. She's like, you have to ask the government for permission for a lot. She's like, I'll say that. But basically, as far as the economic systems and stuff like that, what's on TV and so on, it's basically the same. Like, right.
Yeah, I found it to be really free as an American, honestly. I felt like most people just would let you do whatever you wanted as long as you were going to pay for it. And that they really didn't care. Weed is super illegal in China. All drugs are. When I was over there, there was a British guy who got the death penalty for smuggling heroin. And they just straight up, they wouldn't extradite him. They wouldn't do anything. They just killed him.
Holy shit.
So they take it pretty seriously.
Really?
But when I was there, I smoked a lot of weed and nobody ever really cared.
Did you get it from people over there?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you could just buy it. There, guys who worked at the hostels would sell you weed. There was in one city in Chengdu, there was a hash bar that was just like, it was like a 420 bar, and it was full of Chinese people and Westerners just openly smoking weed, and nobody did anything about it. In most cities, if there was like a Westerner bar, like an American or European style like hangout, you could just smoke weed at the bar. You could bring your pipe in or roll a joint at the bar.
That's very interesting. Okay,
Nobody cared. I remember smoking a joint at the park one time, and there was a bicycle cop that rolled by, and I actually kind of got scared and stomped out my joint. And then one of my friends was like, "They don't even know what it smells like. They just think it's a cigarette." And
oh wow.
It's because it's so not a problem that, like, because they've stomped it out, that they just don't even know how to enforce it. Like, people roll weird cigarettes and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So to them, it's just some random Westerner smoking some weird herby cigarette. They don't even stop to think that it's marijuana.
That's really interesting. That's okay. That's very cool. Yeah, I mean, like at this point in my life, like I smoke pot so beautifully that, like, I mean, my brother lives in Oklahoma, and we talked about me moving down there. I'm like, "Well, is pot legal there yet?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "Oh fuck, no, I'm not going." I'm like,
I thought they have medical, I think now.
Maybe medical, but recreational. Yeah. I'm like, no, I just like, it's just, I like smoking pot. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I don't smoke cigarettes.
Right.
I smoke pot. So basically, if I go somewhere, I have to be able to smoke pot, or I'm not going.
Yeah.
So, but that's very cool to hear. And there's a lot about China to adore, admire, to acknowledge it for sure. But I mean, we don't have it. To put it this way, any sort of administration, government, or regime, if you will, can be considered oppressive just by measuring the number of people that they have in prison, right? I mean, that's definitely a measure. America has more people in prison than any other country in the world.
Yep.
That's all I'm going to fucking say.
Yep.
So, Americans stop thinking that this is the land of the fucking free. It's not. Not even close. We rank 6th in the world for police killings a year. 6th. Okay, I mean, so give me a fucking break. Anyway, so Koti Wyoming, that was a very cool situation here. I really enjoyed talking to you and hearing your anecdotes. That was very cool. I feel as though we have barely just kind of tip of the iceberg kind of thing, and that we have a lot more to discuss for another time. So we have each other's information, and we will be in touch through Messenger or whatever. Let's get together and chat.
For sure.
Compare judgments. So very cool. All right, my friend. All right, Koti Wyoming, everybody. This is David Rich for the Gadfly. Tune in next week. Got something super special for you. All right, till then, take care. All right, see you later, buddy.
Bye-bye.